All right, sample problem 2.10 says give the systematic name for each formula or the formula for each name for the following compounds. And A says we have 10,2-fluoride. Now normally for transition elements, they list these Roman numerals within the name to tell you the charge, right? That's indicative of the charge. So a Roman numeral 2 would tell me that it has a 2 plus charge. And you may be asking yourself, well, 10 is not a transition element, right? It's a main group element. It's in group 4A. And that's because tin and lead are kind of the special cases. You can have a 2 plus charge or a 4 plus charge on tin, and the same for lead. So that's why it's included there, this Roman numeral, because they're specifically talking about tin 2 plus. So since they're giving us the name, we're obviously going to give them the formula. So I have 10, SN, with a 2 plus charge. I find fluorine over here, number 9. It's going to have a -1 charge because its closest noble gas is number 10, neon. So let me go ahead and write that up there, F with a minus charge. And so remember, we have to combine these two things in a way that their charges add up to equal 0. So the common factor between 2 and 1 is 2. So I'm only going to need one of the 10s because it's the one with a 2 plus charge. And I'm going to need 2 of the fluorines, right, of the fluorides, that anion there, because then 2 times -1 would equal -2, and -2 plus +2 equals 0. All right, B, they are giving us a formula, so we're going to have to give them the name here, and that's CrI3. The chemical symbol Cr represents chromium, and I represents iodide. So let's see if we can find those on the periodic table. All right, there's chromium, and it's going to be one of those transition elements where we can't just very easily determine the charge. But iodine is a main group element, so I can easily determine the charge of it, and it's going to be a -1. So let me go ahead and write that down. Iodine's going to have a -1 charge. Now, I can use that to my advantage because I know that the sum of the charges here in this CrI3 should add up to equal 0. So if I have 3 iodide ions, 3 times -1 is -3. So then I ask myself, what plus -3 is equal to 0? The only thing it could be is +3. So that means chromium is going to have a 3 plus charge. And like I said in A part, the transition metals are named with Roman numerals to indicate their charge. Chromium, got to get the Roman numeral 3 in there. Iodide, remember it is the anion, so it gets the "ide" ending. C part's giving us the name. And now this is going to be something different too, because you notice it's saying ferric. That is a common name for iron. And so if you'll check page 67 in your textbook, table 2.4, some of the transition metals have common names. And if I look there at iron, the name ferric indicates iron 3 plus. So I'm going to write that down. That indicates iron with a 3 plus charge. So sometimes instead of iron 3, which would be the systematic name for this thing, they use the common names. So it's important to look over those in that table 2.4 as some of these common names. Oxide, that's going to be the anion, right, for oxygen. So let me put my O here. And let's see, what kind of charge does oxygen have? It has a -2, right? Its closest noble gas is neon. It has to gain 2 electrons to get there. So it's going to have a 2 minus charge. So the common factor between 2 and 3 is going to be 6. So what times +3 gives me +6? That's going to be 2. So Fe2O3, because 3 times -2 would be -6, right? And so then I would have 2 times +3, +6 plus -6. That would equal 0. So that would be my formula for ferric oxide. The last one here, D, COS. And so that's my formula, and I've got to name that thing. So the CO, right, that's cobalt. S, that's sulfur. So let's see what we have. S is closer to argon. I'm going to look at it first because cobalt's one of those transition elements. So let's see, I've got a -2 charge associated with that sulfur. 2 minus. So that means that's going to be my anion. Cobalt must have a 2+ charge. Now, I did not get that from looking at the periodic table, right, because it's a transition element. But I know that the sum of those charges for the cobalt and the sulfur have to add to equal 0. And so I asked myself, what plus -2 is 0? And it has to be +2. So now I can name this thing. Remember, the cation comes first, keeps its name, cobalt. Now, since this is a transition element, I also need to include the Roman numeral to tell me what the charge is. So the Roman numeral 2, because this is cobalt 2, sulfide. Right, because sulfur is our anion. It's going to get the "ide" ending.